All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first workshop of the year in the Compete Network community. Stoked for this one, stoked for our guest, stoked for the topic. I will introduce her shortly. But first and foremost, if you don't know what the Compete Network community is, this is your first time checking out, welcome. We're happy to have you here. This is the community for product marketers and competitive intelligence professionals that are looking to level up. And so we have AMAs, workshops, events, tons of different sessions to help you improve your profession. So today we have Jess Petrella, and I will bring her on stage in a minute. But before I do, we've got a little bit of housekeeping too. If you look into the events tab too, we've got a couple other things coming up. We have an AMA on win-loss. We have Yield and Pay sharing how to land your next product marketing job. And we also have our big quarterly event. It's not on the event page yet, but you get a sneak peek. We'll be doing a quarterly event, a celebration on all things win-loss as well. So stoked for that. We also have the topic today on AI. We did an AI and competitive intelligence research report where you, the community members, took the time out to respond to our survey and contribute to the report. You can also check that out on thecompetenetwork.com. But without further ado, the person you actually came here for and wanted to learn from, introducing Jess Petrella, the Director of Product Marketing at Unbounce, the official, unofficial queen of AI and product marketing. And today she is sharing how to conduct customer interviews and SWOT analysis with AI. Jess, thank you so much for joining us today.
Amazing. Thank you, Adam, for that kind intro. And hello, everyone. I'm super excited to be here. The Compete Network and the content that Klue has put out has been such a staple for the product marketing community. So I'm very excited to contribute my take on customer interviews and SWOT analysis with AI. So that's what we'll be digging into today. So let's jump into it. So as Adam shared, I'm Jess Petrella. I've worked in SaaS for over 13 years. I am also the creator of PMM Ops. And under that, I created a product called AI for Product Marketers. A lot of what I do in AI for product marketers is very exploratory, requires a great deal of discovery around how we as PMMs can leverage this technology. So a lot of what we're digging in today has come from my own use cases, how I leverage AI, how I use it in my day-to-day to save time and accelerate my output. So let's dig in. So today's workshop will be covering, first and foremost, a quick refresher on customer interviews. What are they, when to use them, how to get the most out of them, and how to structure them. I'll also be sharing a quick overview on AI in general. There's a lot of information out in the world today about AI. Really, you only need to know a fraction of it to wrap your mind around how to leverage this tool in your day-to-day work. So I'll share a quick overview of some of the basics. We'll get into some of the tools that I'll be working with in today's workshop. Just as a spoiler, they are both free and super accessible, so something you can kick up and start working with today. And then we'll get into a demo. So I'll walk through how I use AI to generate customer interviews, structure them, and launch them, as well as running through a detailed SWOT analysis using AI as your best friend in terms of developing your strategic thinking around your competitors. And then at the end, we'll have a good chunk of time for Q&A and a quick recap. So really recommend sharing your Q&A or your questions, in the chat as time goes through the workshop, and we'll address them right at the end. Wonderful. So quick icebreaker, I'd love to hear in the chat, how often do you perform customer interviews? Is it often, rarely, or never to almost never? Okay, wonderful. Good to know. Regardless of how often you leverage customer interviews, whether it's often, you're doing it regularly, or almost never, just not something that's part of your day-to-day work. There's a lot to unlock here, so I'm excited to jump into it and get through some of the benefits of running customer interviews and how to do that more effectively with AI. And then also in the chat, I'd love to understand what your experience level is with AI, from a sort of scale of 1 to 10, 1 being you never used it, maybe not even really heard about how you could use it, 10 being power user, it's part of your day-to-day work, and somewhere in between, maybe you're dabbling with it. Wonderful. And again, regardless of your experience level, the elements that I'll walk through today are going to be quite accessible. And then at the end, I'll kind of share through some of the more advanced use cases for AI for product marketers. All right, so customer interviews, why do them, right? Customer interviews are your gateway into understanding your customer, point blank, very simple. But also comes with a lot of benefits in doing that. You can understand your customer needs, their wants, their goals, their business motivations, how they perform business, what are the different motions of work they get through. It can help you identify customer pain points, as well as potentially identify target audiences. So good fit for features that are coming up or content that you're creating. You can also helps you develop customer empathy and build rapport for your customer base. You really can't do that without getting to know your customers. So interviewing them, which really just means having discussions with them, talking with them, getting to know them. It's a great way to build empathy and do your job in a way that really connects with your customers. And then also learning about their language and wording. So some of us perform messaging work, some of us write copy, some of us are engaged in our assets for launches, etc. Hearing back from your customer, which is typically your target audience, is a great way to sort of understand the language and the wording that they use in their day-to-day. How do they describe what they do? How do they describe the value they get from your platform? And how can you use that language to communicate back to them in your launch assets, in your marketing campaigns, etc. And then also there's sort of a sneaky aspect to customer interviews. This wouldn't be a Klue workshop without mentioning competitors. And I also find that, interviewing your customers, having those conversations with them does uncover a lot of their experience with alternatives. That can be direct competitors or just alternative solutions. And it's a great way to get to know how your target audience thinks about and responds to the competitive alternatives in your space. So it's a really interesting way, of course, to your own discretion, to the discretion of your customer in terms of how comfortable they are talking about competitors they've used or considered. But it's a really great way to get close to your competitors without having to actually get close to them through your customers. So those are sort of the benefits of working with your customers in a conversational interview manner, something that I take into my work on a regular basis. And then when we're thinking about customer interviews, there's a typical structure around this. It involves a number of different components. So first and foremost, you need a customer list, usually an email list. This could be very focused on a specific cohort. For example, based on a feature that they've adopted, you may want to specifically talk to them based on the tenure that they have within your user base, whether they're a net new customer or a longtime customer. But a segmented customer list is typically where you start when going down the path of customer interviews. From there, you have to invite them. You need to follow up with them. You need to thank them for joining. You need to send them an incentive, perhaps, for joining you, whether it's a gift card or credits, etc. So that's another component of the typical customer interview structure. An interview script is essential. You don't go into a customer interview with nothing in front of you. Of course, that could strike up a good conversation. But without that structure, you can kind of go off into a direction that doesn't quite give you the answers that you're looking for, doesn't quite help you evaluate across a number of interviews in a fair, non-biased manner. So an interview script, really important for you to get to the bottom of what you want to discuss with the customer. The fourth component, a note-taking sheet. So that can be as simple as a Google Sheet, with all your questions added to it so that you and other participants within your organization can input information as you learn it from your customer. Then that leads to, of course, gathering internal participation. Do you want engineers part of these discussions? Do you want product part of these discussions? Do you want to bring marketing or even senior leadership into these discussions in order to learn and get close to the customer in the same way that you'll be? So that often depends on the goal that you have for your customer interview. You'll need a video and a recording medium. So that can be as simple as Zoom or Google Hangout or Google Meet, sorry. You will have to, of course, go through your interview sessions individually. Out of that, you should have a transcript. If you're recording your videos, you can do that very simply with Zoom or Google Meet. And then the final piece to this structure is that you would have some sort of conclusion, right? We look to learn this, and this is what we eventually learned from talking to our customers. So reporting on the work that was had happened around your customer interviews, also really important so that you can bring value into the org, communicate the outcomes of your discussions, and apply them to the different decisions that you're making and have in front of you. So it's a big list. It's a lengthy list. Customer interviews, or outside of the actual work, half hour to an hour with each customer, can be quite time consuming. A lot of this is busy work for a product marketer or a CI specialist. And what we really want to be doing is talking to our customers, right? So this is where AI comes in. AI can help you fast track a lot of this, what I call busy work. So writing those multiple emails that are required in the funnel of inviting customers to your interviews. Writing your interview script, these can be quite lengthy. They can change depending on the goal. Sometimes you can reuse something from the past, sometimes you can't, right? So fast tracking the writing of the interview script, thinking of questions to get to the answers that you're looking for. Transcripts and summaries, so summarizing that really long discussion that you had with your customer in order to have actionable insights, and then reporting on those actionable insights so that they make sense for others in your organization as an outcome to your interviews. All of this can be done with the support of AI. So that's a big part of what I'll be walking through today. This is something that I can proudly say is tried and true, something that I've leveraged in my own day-to-day work, and can say that this has saved me to 4 to 6 hours across, a new cohort of customer interviews. So that's really the value of AI for product marketers today. A lot of it has to do with time savings against some of those more mundane, tedious tasks. To help us get to the heart of what we're really wanting to do, which is talk to our customers, communicate with them, and learn from them. All right, so a lot of this, like I said, has to do with AI. This is what simplifies this process. And I think that, it can be very easily misunderstood. It can be very overwhelming. There's a lot of content in the world around AI. But what I have on this page and in the next page should simplify it. And it's really like as a, entry level, or just getting your feet wet, or just leveraging AI for a few certain tasks on your list. This is all you really need to know. So don't get overwhelmed with AI. Focus on that end goal, focus on your use cases and how you can leverage it. You do not need to know all of the inner workings of what machine learning is, et cetera, et cetera. So to simplify it, AI really just makes it possible for machines like our computers to learn from experience, adjust to new inputs, and perform human-like tasks, right? So that's the basis of it. The software that we use today, typically it's hard-coded. It's programmed to do one thing when you click a button or when you drag and drop something, et cetera. AI doesn't quite work like that. When you input something, it's able to understand it on a slightly different level. It can change based on the context. It can adjust to the inputs or your update of the inputs, usually text. And it can output things in a human-like manner in a way that static traditional software doesn't quite do today. And that's why you see AI becoming infused in a lot of the software that you typically use, because it can bring a lot of advantage to our day-to-day work. We're used to pushing a mouse around, clicking and typing, but that's going to change over time, right? And AI is the basics of how that will change. So it's very simple, just a slightly different way that the machine processes information and spits it out. You'll also hear a lot about LLMs. So these are called large language models. This is where it gets a little technical, but not really, right? Deep learning algorithm. We know about algorithms. They're in all of our social media, that they can perform a variety of natural language processing tasks. So a lot of the AI that you'll interact with today is language-based. You input text in your language, and it outputs text in your language, right? It's very language-based. It's very text prompt-based. Whether you're writing blog posts or you're creating images with AI, you're doing that starting with text, right? And that's the current sort of realm of AI, and it's how you'll typically interface with AI today until something, a new wave drastically changes this. You also hear GPT. This is just meaning generative pre-trained model, right? So that LLM, that large language model, this is pre-trained, right? Based on X, amount of trillions of data points over X period of time, so that it has a great deal of knowledge and information and data points so that it can process and learn from its experiences and adjust to new inputs and, output human-like tasks. So that's really as technical as it needs to get when it comes to AI, unless, of course, you're working with software on a different level. So exposure to AI has drastically increased over the last 12 months. If you didn't hear about it 12 months ago, you sure have heard about it since then. Software like Microsoft Office has exposed AI to over 1 billion of their users with AI Copilot, and the list goes on, right? So this has just been a massive transformation. And now's a really good time to get your feet wet with it and get using this in your day-to-day work, because it's here to stay and it's something that will evolve over time. Again, like I said, AI is replacing language-based tasks today. That's how you'll typically interface with it. That's how I will be demoing it today. And then again, it's a long game. So, if you're just getting started with AI today, you're already ahead of the curve. It's going to evolve greatly over the next number of years, and that evolution will happen slowly as we continue to adopt it for new use cases. And then also, so when we bring it back to how product marketers can leverage AI, we do a number of things in our day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month work. If I were to sort of part it out into our processes, we do a great deal of planning, research, we execute on things like launches, we enable like things on features, and we report on all of this, right? So AI is something that can be infused in everything that we do in all of these different parts of what we do. And what we're talking about today very specifically is the research piece around customer research and SWOT analysis. AI is really great as a research partner, and I hope that is sort of showcased today. I also want to call out that if you have, an innate interest in AI for product marketers, just some shameless self-promotion here, I have a cheat sheet for AI, as well as a lot of different resources to support that on my website, pmmops.com. All right, so today, as I mentioned, we're going to be demoing some of these use cases around customer and SWOT analysis. I will be using primarily Notion AI. It's a really simple, free to use, easy as an entry point AI solution. If you're already using Notion, a great starting point. It's part of the software that you've already leveraged. And then I'll also be using ChatGPT. This is the most popular solution on the market today because it's extremely accessible and it has some of the most up-to-date large language models behind it. So it's a really great tool, incredibly versatile, and I'll talk through how you can leverage ChatGPT for SWOT analysis. So I'll swap over to the demo. First and foremost, what you're looking at here is Notion. And I've added a few different inputs into here to create a simple template to generate your script and emails for customer interviews. So the template is structured with a quick description. So this is the language input that AI will be leveraging to create your emails that invite and follow up with your customers, as well as the script that you'll be leveraging during your customer interviews. So the input here, this is what AI will be reading. And then we have the prompts here, which are outlined. All you have to do is click generate once you've included the inputs. There's many ways to use Notion AI to generate prompts. I'm using the very basic saved prompt setting. You can, type something and ask AI to leverage it as a prompt. So there's many ways to use it, but the way that I'm using it today is for saved templates of prompts. So we'll just simply add the information here as our text input in the description. And then I'll ask AI with several different prompts to create my emails, as well as write my script questions. So we'll do that now. I guess I can do it for human ops. I would be the interviewer. The topic is our new product. I mean, I don't create products, but product marketers would be the audience. The duration is 30 minutes. Let's say February 25th is the date that I want to talk to folks. Improve our content. And the incentive is I'm offering a $25 gift card. Okay, so those are the decisions as an interviewer that you'd have to make. When do you want to talk to folks? How long do you want to talk to folks? Who are you talking to and for what reason? That's all you have to do here is make those decisions, add that into your Notion document with a clear description. And then I'm going to ask AI to use that description and create my email. So the first one is use a description, write a simple customer invite email. So click generate. What it's doing is it's reading that information that I input, and it's going to create this into a structured email that I can copy paste. I can also edit it, based on, what I like about it or what I don't. But as you can see, it has all the general information, right? Invitation to discuss our new product, introducing myself as the interviewer, who I work for, addressing who the audience is, the duration of the interview, the date, etc. So all the information is present there. I can ask AI, just if I highlight this, to rewrite this in a different tone. Let's see here. Click update. It's going to write a slightly different version of this for me. So if I wasn't happy with the first one, it can keep rewriting it until I'm happy with it. I can ask the prompt, through the prompt, I can ask AI to write this in a certain tone. Even ask it to add emojis. Maybe that's part of my brand. I like to keep it funky and fresh, right? So this is a simple customer invite email. Make it friendly, add some emojis. Let's see what AI does with that. Perfect. I often use the wave to say hi to the product marketing audience when I'm sharing my content. That's great. That fits in. I don't like that emoji, so I can remove it. This one seems a little, too much, and that looks good to me, right? So it's done what I've said. It's writing my emails for me. I can keep doing that. So this is the reminder email. And this is the thank you email after I've talked with the customer. Again, it's continuing to use the description information, when they joined me, who it was for, reminding them that they get a $25 gift card. So that's done exactly what I've asked it to, right? Quite quickly, I can copy paste these with maybe minor edits and be on my way to invite customers into my interview. And the same simplicity goes for writing your interview script and questions that you want to ask your customer. So any good interview, it starts with an introduction. So again, AI has the description. It knows who I'm talking to, what about, and it's going to write a quick introduction for me, right? It's going to take about 30 minutes for product marketers like yourself. All of this information I already gave it. And then the tedious pieces here. What do I talk to my customers about if I want to probe into their job and their business, or their day-to-day challenges, or how they solve their challenges today, or how, their preferences and perspectives are related to the solution that we offer, or even, again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the session, learning about alternatives that they've used or considered, right? So click generate. It's going to add 5 questions for each of these topics. Tell us about their role. How does our product fit into your daily workflow? What are your significant challenges? And then we can probe into that a little bit more with very challenge-based questions. So right in front of my eyes, I'm seeing a script very specifically generated for my interviews here. So I have about 20 questions generated, categorized very specifically on things that I would typically and generally talk to my customers about in order to learn about them and understand them more. And then you can go into here, you can adjust them, you can copy paste. This is a good question, but if I didn't like it, I can remove it, right? And then effectively, what happens by using AI in something like Notion, I actually have a full almost brief that I can, if someone else is setting up my interview, my emails, this is where they get the copy for them. If someone else is running the interviews or supporting for certain, blocks of time, this is where they're able to get the interview script and questions. It's all in the same place. It's all generated with AI. So I did talk through that quite a bit, but really that should only take a few minutes to do. So entering your description, building out your emails, writing through your script. You may spend a couple minutes modifying and editing, which is completely normal. You want to make sure that what AI generated is valuable to you. So that's, one of my favorite use cases with AI for product marketers. Competitive intel does play into this in a really interesting way if you ask the right questions, but customer insights are invaluable, getting to them quicker through working with AI, even more so. So that is how I use Notion AI to run through that particular use case. I'll really quickly show how I then, take that transcript from the interview and summarize it with AI. I can also do this in ChatGPT. I'm going to do it today in Notion. So what I do here is I just paste the transcript. I take this from Zoom or Google Meet or whatever recording system you use. I don't have a transcript handy, so what I did is I asked ChatGPT to generate one for me for demo purposes. So you never know when AI is going to help you out. So I'll paste that in here. And then, so again, this is the input, same policy as the last template. this is my input. It's the transcript for the customer interview. And this is my prompt. So I'm asking AI to use that transcript, which I called the transcript, so it knows what I'm talking about, to summarize the following. So description, et cetera, et cetera. I can click generate, and it's going to summarize what it's reading in the transcript. So I now understand a description of the customer, their pain points, their likes about my product, their dislikes about my product, and why they chose the product. So this can be very tedious. If you're talking to 5, 10, 15, 20 customers in a few weeks span, this is really what you're trying to extract from it. This is what lets you know what threads to pull on. And this is what ultimately makes it into your, customer insights report, or however you're, surfacing this within your organization. So by just copy pasting my transcript here, I'm able to summarize that. I'm able to share that, able to bring that into my reporting without having to revisit or reread the transcript or my own notes, which, sometimes can be good, sometimes can't. So that's also just another sort of check off the list, something that's quite tedious when doing customer interviews and made much easier with AI. So that concludes the demo for customer interview script, email, and transcript summary. I have just a few minutes left before we go into Q&A. What I did want to talk through is another tool called ChatGPT. You've either heard of this, tried it yourself, have an account, maybe even a pro account, and it's part of your day-to-day work. But I did want to talk through how this can be leveraged really, really well as a SWOT analysis tool. So I have the pro version of ChatGPT, not to brag. It's very simple to get. It's quite accessible in terms of price point. If you purchase one, AI tool, I would recommend it being the ChatGPT Pro version. The reason for that is that it unlocks web browsing. So I can now read the internet. I can read search engines. I can read web pages with AI. So I don't actually have to read them. AI can do it for me. So if I were to leverage web browser app within ChatGPT, I can now ask it to analyze a competitor for strengths and weaknesses. So let's just look at what that looks like. I'll ask ChatGPT to analyze Apple. So let's look at apple.com. What are their strengths and weaknesses? Seems basic, but it should be basic. It doesn't need to be more complex than that. Please summarize in point form. So letting it know how you want that output to come across. Wonderful. So it's outlined very simply, strengths and weaknesses for Apple. It's done that by reading articles on the matter very quickly, as well as analyzing their website. And then I can also, it usually recommends a page that I can visit to learn a little bit more. So it's very basic, very high level, but that's a good starting point. I can also go deeper if I want to understand Apple's opportunities and threats against one of their competitors. Let's call it Samsung. Well, not let's call it Samsung. It is Samsung, let's be honest. But so I'll ask it to directly compare Apple and Samsung smartphones. What are Apple's opportunities and threats? Well, and then again, being specific about how I want the output to be shared. usually point form, just makes it easier to read. And please say please and thank you to your future AI overlords. They'll enjoy that. Nice to be polite. So again, it's researching with Bing. It's searching for articles around Apple and Samsung comparisons. And now it's giving me a check mark, meaning I have some information for you. So it's sharing some of the opportunities, but then also how Samsung is doing things that might, get in the way of how Apple might be able to perform in market. Again, so very high level, very basic. I can continue probing and asking questions to uncover deeper meaning to the threats or opportunities. There are two things I'd caution for folks that are using either the free ChatGPT or the pro ChatGPT. First things first, the free ChatGPT, you're unable to browse the internet. So you can't read active websites or search for articles, etc. So that's one limitation. It will give you information based on the latest version of a website they might have, which in the free version, ChatGPT 3.5, really only goes up to about 2022. So that might be somewhat limiting. You'll get similar results, but it won't be up to date. So you'll end up having, to go back and revisit on your own time. But it can help with some of the, quick bullet points. In the pro version, while it does read the internet, while it does read web pages, etc., I would share a slight caution to not overshare on your own business information. So of course, I'm using Apple and Samsung harmlessly today, but you'll never want to input information about your business and your business's specific competitors, because AI reads that and learns from it and can use it anywhere else. There is a ChatGPT business solution. If you were using it for that use case, you have to pay more for that. But it is a little bit more black box, so that you're not, sharing your information with AI that it can leverage in other places. Because remember, it learns, it adapts, it manipulates content for human-like outputs, and you don't want it having, proprietary information about your business. So that's just the caution I share around using ChatGPT for, competitor business related information. But either way, as you can see, we're able to outline a really well-detailed, albeit high-level SWOT analysis with ChatGPT. And, you leverage this as your strategic pal, your strategic collaborator, keep asking questions, unlocking more on a slightly different level. So that's another use case, something that is a meaningful part of my work. And something that I really enjoy using AI for. So that is the end of the demo. It's been really wonderful chatting through this with all of you. Just want to say before we go into Q&A, thank you so much for joining today. This is my, outdated QR code that leads you to my LinkedIn if you'd like to connect and discuss any of this past the discussion that we're having today. But yeah, amazing. Thank you all.
Jess, thank you so much. And everyone, scan the QR code, find Jess on LinkedIn. She's a great follow and a great, as you can tell from this session, a great person to be picking their brain when working with AI. There are a lot of questions that came in ahead of time. There's some interesting conversations happening in the chat here, Jess, as well as you were presenting. And I think it's important, and I'm curious from your perspective on this, the limitations and security side of things. You mentioned at the end with ChatGPT conducting research, and a lot of the folks here working in competitive intelligence that might have a lot of proprietary data. A few, including Paul and Matt, have both mentioned sort of the stringent rules in place with using some of these like open LLMs. Is there been a workaround for that? How have you navigated maybe in your company, or like you've heard from other product marketers, kind of balancing that? You don't want to be putting information into something that is open and learning on some of the data you're providing.
Yeah, and exactly. That's a very fair concern and why I highlighted it. Like your organization, if they don't, they should have a policy around AI usage for business purposes. If you're not sure what that is, talking to your legal department, if you have one, is a great way to invoke that conversation. And until you have that green light, I would caution using it for business purposes that go beyond just sort of the more high level stuff like creating user scripts or interview scripts. Like I mentioned, there are solutions that have more private AI instances. So, for example, ChatGPT for Business is private. You can input information. It will not utilize that outside of your workflow. So there are solutions. This is obviously a very well-known concern for the builders of this technology as well as the consumers. So checking with your org, getting that green light, okaying and green lighting the tools that you're using, ensuring that they do have private instances. Some will, some won't. And making sure that you're making smart choices on that front, I think are my recommendations there.
For sure. And like with us at Klue, like it's something we've been talking about a ton with customers, is making sure that the data that is shared, especially from things like win-loss interviews that are incredibly valuable for understanding strengths and weaknesses, that they're not being shared out in an insecure way. So I think that's important and something that is top of mind for so many folks in product marketing. And so, yeah, we've got a couple of other questions here too. I've got one actually there was two that were sent ahead of time, which I find is, as someone that's in content, this is always interesting working with AI. But two different questions on how do you present either the SWOT analysis findings or even maybe the customer interview findings in a way that's, I've got two different here. One that says not boring, and one that is how do you make it read and look like it wasn't completely just churned out by AI?
Yeah, so I think if you're doing things like writing what should be more creative content, like a blog post or a social media post, I don't personally use AI for those use cases. I might use them to simplify my copy. I might use them to adjust the tone of my copy, but that comes from a place that I know what I want to say and how to say it, so it's easy to write, right? I look at more of AI as a effective way to overcome some of the more mundane, high level tasks. And so I steer clear of those more creative tasks with it today. Of course, there's a lot of options and a lot of ways that AI can speak in the tone of your brand, et cetera, et cetera. But there's, we always forget that there's that human element in using AI. It's not just AI doing something and emailing your boss the output, right? You are the one that is creating the output. You want to put it in a deck, modify the terms that it uses or the tone that it uses so that it feels more like your voice. Do it, right? That is going to still save you time. That's still a slight time investment for your presentation or your reporting, but still really important that you are, as a human product marketer, CI specialist, et cetera, are involved in the work and the output because AI can't do everything. And if it's not perfectly up to snuff, you do need to dig in there yourself.
There's a question from Valerie that was, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, that was specific to some of the walkthroughs you were showing there. They asked, when you're using the Notion AI or ChatGPT, do you always manually anonymize some of like the customer interview transcripts to prevent that data leak? And do you think that's like sufficient to anonymize, or is it like, how are you kind of working with that?
Yeah, so Notion specifically AI doesn't get trained off of your Notion docs because Notion is a business tool. So they've privatized the large language models for their usage. So that's not really a deep concern there. I'm always a little cautious though in this day and age with AI. It's still very early days. I don't typically use customer names even in internal documents unless it's asked for. I'll typically call it customer one or customer two, et cetera. And I kind of carry over that practice in creating things like transcript summaries as well. So I always execute with some caution. and understand the technology and how they, do they feed back to AI? ChatGPT does, because that's how they train their models and they own the models, right? But something like Notion AI doesn't own the model. They're leveraging it for in-product use cases.
There's a lot of interesting conversation going on in the chat, and in terms of like the accuracy side of things, again, kind of how we kicked off and how we ended there, around the confidence of ChatGPT that it might provide answers, and how do you kind of prompt it to even verify this. I mean, there's some interesting feedback from Alexander and folks around like asking it to source with URLs and other pieces. So I think there are, while understanding the limitations, there's this like onus on you as the person working with it to get some of that information. Like, you can't just blindly accept some of the things that are happening. There's some like critical thinking, and I think this is going to be like the word of 2024, but like the human in the loop of all of these sort of AI related tasks too.
Of course. Interestingly, ChatGPT has a disclaimer right under where you enter the prompt that says, ChatGPT can make mistakes. Consider checking important information. Because it's not the purpose that you blindly go forward with what AI spits out to you, right? And the pro version actually has added quotes to each of the new pieces of information it shares. So it is getting better at that, right? I think there's a skepticism around trust and transparency that's super prevalent in leveraging AI, especially in this early wave.
For sure. And I'd be remiss there. We've been, again, thinking about this at Klue. One of the cool opportunities we've seen within our product, and I'm sure customers, Lisa Taylor's on here and she was chatting about this before. One interesting area is with review insights. Like, customer reviews is such a great way to be finding sort of customer sentiment on those strengths, weaknesses. And if anyone hasn't checked out what's going on with Klue on the review insight side of things, it's like one of the many AI modules coming out. I know we're coming up on time here, and I appreciate all the time you've given and expertise, Jess. Folks, any other questions, DM them to Jess, send them to us. Maybe we'll do a mailbag podcast or something after, because I've got so many questions to get to here. But my last one for you, which I think is an interesting piece around when you're automating work with customer research. Someone asked, during one of these interviews, a single interviewee might have a comment that's really valuable, and it might even require you to take that secondary question or to follow up. And they're curious, how do you kind of incorporate that if you're trying to scale an interview, but also trying to do that sort of nuanced digging, like investigative work that really comes out of those research?
Yeah. Oh, it's such a great question. Like, I call that pulling a thread, right? And that's normal. Sometimes you can completely derail a customer interview because of something they've said, and it's incredibly relevant, and it's going to unlock some sort of thinking or a decision. We're humans, or we're product marketers, and do it. Like, follow that thread. AI script writing is really meant to create parameters and structure, right? That's scalable. But at the end of the day, you are in the driver's seat, and you're ensuring that you're getting what you need out of that discussion. So if you skip a few questions or skip ahead, that's totally normal. Sometimes certain questions aren't relevant based on what you learned in a previous answer. So it's not really about getting every question answered. It's more about pulling on the right threads and surfacing the right insights. AI helps surface those insights, but only you can pull on those threads and identify them in the discussion. So again, it's always that sort of like meet and match when it comes to, being a individual with a specialization and working with AI to get you to your results quicker.
Well, this was awesome. The chat was loving this throughout. Tons more questions, and we're going to have to get to at some point here, Jess. Before you leave, where can people reach you? I know you have a ton of really great AI workflows and tools as well for product marketers.
Yeah, I'm always on LinkedIn. I'm a LinkedIn nerd, so find me there. I'm posting, I'm sharing. And then I also share my content and freebies and tidbits on pmmops.com. So great place to find what I'm up to. But please reach out. I love nerding out about this topic, love sharing my perspective. I've been chipping away at AI, particularly for product marketers over the last 3 years. So yeah, always excited to learn from others, share, and keep on keeping on.